Louie A. Johnson. Louie, or L.A. Johnson, was born April the 6th, 1908, in Wilson County, Kansas, to Elijah and Martha Johnson. He joined a family of 3 half-sisters and 2 half-brothers and 2 older brothers. There was 1 brother and 1 sister born later. Their circumstances were humble, but high moral standards were lived and taught. The family suffered a great loss when his father died when Louie was 9 years old. Ma Johnson, as she was known, finished raising her family and took them to church. It was very difficult for a widow in those days. The boys went out to work at a young age. Louie left home at 16 and shortly after went to California to seek his fortune. While there, he learned to weld and started working, building refineries. In 1927, he went back to Kansas for a visit and saw Dorothy Crawshaw again and saw her in a new light. Soon he proposed, and they were married and traveled the unpaved, unmarked roads back to California. Prosperity seemed sure and life was good. Then the Depression hit and jobs were gone. It was necessary to return to Kansas, where Helen was born in 1929. Dorothy and Louie both had lots of experience in making do when they were children, so they well understood saving money and doing without. They rented a farm, with Louie working several days a month for the owner to pay the rent. They needed milk for Helen, so a farmer loaned them a cow that had never been milked. Louie had the pleasure of teaching her to stand to be milked. Louie cleaned the brush out of an old orchard and grew fruit to eat and to sell. He and Grandpa Tom, Dorothy's father, butchered hogs and sold sausage. They grew sorghum cane, and using a sorghum mill, made sorghum which had to substitute for sugar, which required cash. They made homemade hominy, peanut butter, and sauerkraut. Food was grown and preserved or done without. Later, Louie got a variety of jobs in a number of places, and they moved around a lot. In 1935, Barbara was born, and Dorothy had ill health for several years. Louie and the hired girl had to take care of the family for a while. Louie worked for various companies welding and pipe fitting in all kinds of weather. He was working for Union Gas in Independence, Kansas when World War II started. He left to do war work, building refineries and chemical plants. Dorothy and the girls stayed in Independence. He was sorely missed by them. After the war, the family moved to Fredonia, Kansas, where he was partner in a machine shop. Helen had her senior year in Fredonia and graduated from Fredonia High School. The next year she went to junior college, then married Dale Scarth in 1947. They moved to Stillwater, Oklahoma to attend Oklahoma A&M. Louie felt the call of construction and went back to it in Oklahoma, North Dakota, and other places, while Barbara finished high school in Fredonia. When Barbara graduated in 1953, Dorothy started going with Louie to many different places, including Brazil and the Virgin Islands. Barbara attended Kansas State College and graduated in January of 1957. She then went to Midland, Texas, where Helen and Dale lived, and she taught home ec at Midland High School. She met and married Wendell Thomason in December of 1957. They had 3 children: Janice, 1958 to 1968, Beth, born in 1960, and Paul, born in 1966. Helen and Dale had 4 children: Deborah, David, Deanne, and Danny. Dorothy and Louie continued on construction for some years. For a man who had very little formal education, Louie achieved amazing things. As pipe superintendent on large jobs, he was often in charge of several hundred men, including men who had considerably more formal education than he. He certainly was an example of one who was educated in the College of Hard Knocks and self-educated through reading and observation. He and Dorothy both liked to read and passed this down to their daughters. Louie always insisted the girls go to Sunday school, although he did not go to church himself. In 1957, he had a religious experience while working in Michigan. He joined the Baptist Church and ever after attended faithfully and supported the church monetarily. Around 1960, they made Midland their home and joined Bellevue Baptist Church. Louie served as a deacon and a Sunday school teacher for many years. In the latter years of their lives, Dorothy and Louie greatly enjoyed going to Wendell and Barbara's ranch. Louie was ranch manager and kept doing the job after he should have quit because he liked it and to keep the job open for his grandson Paul. After Paul finished college, they still came to the ranch, so Louie could help out and continue to share his experience and expertise in welding, carpentry, animal husbandry, and other factors of ranching with Paul. When they were old themselves, they grew extra vegetables so they could share them with the old people at the church. Louie tenderly cared for Dorothy the last years of her life when she had heart trouble. He was very lonely after her death, but carried on with a good spirit. He had reasonably good health and was able to live independently, drive his own car, and carry on his own business until shortly after his 87th birthday. Louie's achievements in the area of his vocation are amazing, but his relationships with family members are of greater significance. Each member of the family treasures the wisdom and humor he has shared with them. His advice had to be requested, it was not offered. The grandchildren and great-grandchildren love to hear his stories of old times. He will be greatly missed, but fondly remembered. Barbara Johnson Thomason, 1995.